Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Alpine Property Live webinar series, Buying Your Dream Home in France, in the Alps. My name is Jonathan, one of the senior traders at Lumon, an international payment specialist. I'm your host this evening to discuss all things France, property, and the Alps. The Alps is genuinely one of my most favourite places in the world. I love my skiing, I love French food, and just that unique French way of life. Of course, an alpine resort isn't just for the winter. There's plenty to do there in the summer as well. So, yeah, magical, beautiful place. I'm joined this evening by an expert panel with information from people who live and breathe that mountain life, and certainly looking forward to hearing some of their personal experiences of the area, this wonderful place. I will shortly hand over to them for their intros, but before then, just some information for you, our audience. We like these webinars to be really interactive, and you should see a question box where you can raise any questions direct to us in order for us to try and get through them. So feel free to do that. We've also had lots of questions submitted beforehand, so we'll try and get through as many of those as possible. Usually we do struggle to get every question answered. I'm sure you can appreciate trying to fit all of the information to do with buying an overseas property into just 1 hour. It's not possible, but this is just really to give you a snapshot and get some faces and names together for people who are experts to deal with all of this. And you'll certainly get all of the panelists' contact details, so you can contact them directly afterwards for a proper chat. We'll also get a copy of the recording to you all as well. So thank you for joining us. Let's hand over to our panelists. Firstly, our partner for this evening, Gareth Jeffries, partner at Alpine Property. Over to you, please, Gareth.
Hello, good evening. Yeah, I've been out in the Alps for 25 years. I've been with Alpine Property for 24 years. We started out in around the Port de Soleil, Morzine, but we've since expanded across the Haute-Savoie. So that's the area which is around about an hour and a half from Geneva Airport. We cover places like Chamonix, Saint-Gervais, Samoin, Châtel, Morzine-le-Ger, and we have agents who are in all these resorts, and we've been working online, buying and selling in all that time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gareth. Looking forward to hearing some of your experiences there and insight. Thank you. And over to Nathalie Hilton, our mortgage advisor from International Property Finance.
So, hi everybody, good evening. Yes, my name is Nathalie Hilton. I am the bank relationship manager for International Private Finance. We are a French mortgage broker based in London and Paris. We've been established something like 17 or 18 years ago. So we're very well established on that segment. We arrange mortgages for British buyers who are looking to purchase a property in France, and in particular in the French Alps, where the vast majority of our clients tend to invest. We are a team of 8 people, and we're all bilingual. We all have loads of experience in our past in working with estate agents or for estate agents. Personally, I was born in the Alps, I grew up in the Alps, I came to the UK almost 30 years ago, and I've always been working with real estate. And over the last 12 years, I've been working with the financing side of things. So I'm here this evening to answer all your questions on how to get a mortgage and what are the criteria to qualify for a mortgage in France.
Thank you very much, Nathalie. I see we've got quite a few questions on the mortgage side of things, so look forward to getting through some of those. And without last but no means least, a man with a fantastic surname, no relation by the way, but Mr. Alan Watson, our independent financial advisor from Spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm a partner in Spectrum IFA Group. We are one of the largest private advisory companies in Europe. We are in France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Switzerland, and the Benelux countries. We're a company that believes in the longevity and experience in the business. We have all been around a long, long time. In my case, I've been doing exactly this job in Europe for around 38 years now. I don't like saying that anymore, but it's the truth. It's a situation where experience and knowledge adds a lot of value to the sort of people we deal with. So not only are we financial advisors, we also, because we live here, our boys have grown up here in the mountains, first of all in the Haute-Savoie, and now we live in the Savoie. We know about the school system, we know about the tax system, we know about the social system. I have clients sometimes ask me, what is the best place to get car insurance from? Can you tell me a good lawyer because our wills are 20 years out of date? All these sorts of things we can add and we can help and make people feel comfortable in their life. I've personally been in this part of France for 25 years with my wife and boys. Before that, I was in Holland running my own business, exactly the same thing, financial advisory in The Hague, working with the likes of Shell, European Space Agency, European Patent Office. I'm sure many of you know Holland. It's really a magnet to the international people. So that was a pleasure to work there. Before that, I was in Germany. And before that, many years before that, I was in the Middle East working for an advertising agency, and then dealing with the clients of American Express, British Bank of the Middle East. So you can say most of my life has been some sort of financially connected situation. And now happily living in Chambéry in the Savoie, and very happy to help all sorts of people, all sorts of situations, as every day is different. So looking forward to hearing the questions and being of assistance to everyone tonight. Thank you.
No, thank you, Alan. That's brilliant. And myself, Jonathan, well, I've been doing this for 15 years. Lumon's been in business for 25 years, looking after people buying, selling property all over the world. We've got a real speciality in France. We know lots of the notaires, the French solicitors, and we work with all of the people on your screens just to really facilitate those currency transactions when you're looking to buy or sell property internationally. So on your screen, audience, you should see a poll regarding when you might be beginning to look at property over in France. It's helpful for us if you're able to answer this, just to give us a bit more of a snapshot of where you might be in the buying process. As you're possibly aware, the buying process in France, it's not an overnight thing. We are talking a good 3 months, really, sometimes a little bit faster, sometimes a little bit longer, but a good sort of 3 months from sort of offer in, being accepted, to the final act or the completion. So yes, helpful for us to understand where you may be in that process to look, so we can try and give you some information regarding the timelines. Thank you, everyone who's answered that poll. I'm going to launch another one regarding the financial side. That's certainly where Lumon is, you know, more relevant. So you can be looking at a 3-month window from offer in to completion, and in that time the currency markets can be very volatile. We've seen a lot of currency market movement with the new man in the White House. So yes, understanding where you are in that process in terms of availability of funds can be very important. Thank you, everyone who has answered that. And then just one more poll regarding you, the audience, where you're joining us from. The actual buying process is the same wherever in the world you're buying from into France, but there can be little nuances, you know, according to where you're from. So again, it's just helpful for us to get a little bit of information there to help us answer your questions as relevantly as possible. So thank you very much, everyone who's answered those polls. Right, let's dive into some of these questions. As a reminder, you can submit live questions, audience, as we go. But Gareth, let's turn to you. I think let's start with some of the basics. So for anyone very early in the process, how do I start out on my search? What are the first steps people should be taking, please, Gareth?
So that's the fun bit. You get to come out on holiday and experience a few of the different ski areas, resorts, stations de ski. And most, if you're coming from the UK, generally people have quite an open mind. They'll have a few places where they would have been before, but I would come back, take a holiday, look at it from the point of view of buying. Come and visit in the summer too, and try out a few places. I'm often asked, what is the best place to buy? And there is no answer to that question. It very much depends on what you're into, and each place has pros and cons. So I love discussing that, asking, what people are into, what people are looking for, and suggesting places to go. But in the end, pretty much I would be happy living in any of or having a second home or living in any of the places that we cover.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess the beauty of speaking to an expert is they're going to ask you questions which are going to help you to make decisions, aren't they? Certainly I know that'll be true for myself, and I'm sure Natalie and Alan, there's a huge amount of property for sale over there, and you might have this idea, I want to buy in the Alps, but it's only really with a conversation with someone who knows and breathes knows the types of properties, knows what's going to suit different people, having done this for many years, that you really get that understanding. So yeah, great shout there, and you get a holiday as well. Brilliant, everyone loves that. Just in terms of the buying process then, Gareth, how does that work over in France? What are the steps people will go through once that offer's been accepted, please?
I think once you've got an idea of where you're looking, and you've got an idea of you've got your head around the market, the next thing is can you afford to pay for it? So that's, if you've got the cash, then it's not a huge question. You just want to think about how to move the cash from the UK over, but that's your subject, Jonathan. If you need a mortgage, then you need to talk to someone like Natalie from IPF to make sure you've got the funds. But yeah, if you've got the funds in place and you're viewing properties and you find one which you think you can make an offer on, you think you can talk to your agent about getting the price right. But then quite quickly you'll be asked to sign with us a purchase offer, and we'll get both the buyer and the seller to sign that. Then we'll move to a compromis de vente, which is the first contract, which can be done fairly quickly, within a week or two. And then there'll be a period while everything needs to get sorted out. So the titles for the property and the mortgages and that sort of thing, and that period's minimum of about 3 months. And at the end of that, you sign the acte de vente, which is the final contract, and then you'll be the owner. The one thing I missed is, and this is different from the UK, you'll need to put a deposit down after you sign the compromis at the first contract, which is 10%. And if you put a clause, you could put a clause. We'd advise you, if you had a mortgage, to put a clause in to say that if you can't get a mortgage, you don't have to buy the property, and you won't lose your deposit. But if you just decide you don't want to carry on, and there's not a reason that's covered within the contract, then you risk losing that 10% if you don't close the deal at the end.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much, Gareth. And of course, anyone interested in buying can run through that process in detail any time there with Gareth. Okay, well, Natalie, we've already mentioned you. Obviously, if you're going to be buying, I guess you need to know what your budget's going to be. So if you are considering a mortgage, there's obviously some steps to take before you're sort of putting offers in. What are some of those early steps, and what sort of timelines is this going to work towards? How soon before potentially having an offer in, for example, should people be having a conversation with you, and then how long does that process take before they get the offer?
Sure. So as Gareth was saying, the earlier you start with the mortgage, the better. So the idea is really, as soon as you've sort of made up your mind as to what you want to buy and the destination, the resort you want to buy in, it's what can I afford. And that's our job. So we would have a detailed conversation with you at that early stage to assess your eligibility and to check whether you can qualify for a French mortgage and at what level. And if you do, we'll be able to tell you how much you'll be able to borrow. And we will send you some initial quotations, giving you some ideas of rates and monthly repayments and all of that. Once you've decided on the specific mortgage, specific lender, we will set up the mortgage for you. We'll arrange everything for you. There's a fair amount of paperwork that is required. We will again take you through all of that process step by step. And generally, from the moment you've provided your paperwork and we submit a file to a lender, we reckon that we can obtain a formal approval in principle within about 10 days, I would say, of submission of the file. This is actually quite handy today because there are a number of cash buyers, just like when you buy in the UK. You're competing against those cash buyers who, if you need a mortgage, and therefore having your formal approval in principle under your arm gives you that extra power with the agent, and also will reassure the vendor that obviously you're viable and you will go through, the purchase will go through, and you will complete. In terms of time frame, so from the moment we get that initial approval in principle, then you can sign the compromis de vente, you can move forward, and we would get the mortgage offer issued within a month and a half. It really depends on your circumstances. It depends on the level of paperwork that's required. So overall, if you start at the point when you sign the compromis de vente, for me, I would say it's a little bit too late. You really need to start way ahead to just know that you're safe on that side, that the finance is in place and that you can go through. The clause suspensive, so this clause that Gareth mentioned that protects you, basically stating that your purchase is subject to mortgage approval, that's normally giving you 60 days, so 2 months or 2 months and a half to arrange the mortgage. We can well arrange that within that time frame. It's not a problem at all, but it is the sort of time that it will take to arrange a mortgage. So it's not maybe as fast as we think. In the UK, it can be a little bit faster than that. So people tend to think it's really fast in France, but it's not as quick.
Oh, that's perfect. And I think one of the takeaways always with these webinars is speak to the experts early and get things organized quickly, so it's not a big rush last minute. You know, and look, there is going to be a little bit of admin with these things, and you know, getting it all done nice and early is sensible. Thank you, Nathalie. Well, Alan, definitely some admin when we're dealing with financial matters. That's why it's good to have you on hand. So if people are moving out to France and they've got, say, an existing relationship with their UK advisor, how does that work in sort of practice? I mean, from people you're sort of speaking to, would they not stay with them and retain the investments, or would they move the investments? How does that work, please, Alan?
Yeah, this is a situation that does come across our desk quite often, because obviously if you have a good financial advisor, you have a good long-term relationship, you're comfortable. It's not pleasant to move and say, sorry, we have to say goodbye now. Brexit has not helped this situation at all, because previously, obviously, the UK being Eurozone, it was far easier. There are still lots of grey areas in regulation, who can advise where. But the simple answer is that if you are with your UK advisor and you move to France, then there are legal issues as to that advisor continuing the relationship. The most important part of that, of course, is regulation in France. The UK advisor probably is not regulated in France. The client becomes a fiscal resident of France. So it's not really correct that you're still advising them when you are not regulated in the territory where they live. So that's an issue. We know it goes on. We know that there are people who still have that cozy relationship, so they like to retain their people. We know that there are some UK advisors who are taking fees from the clients and continuing the relationship, not only France, Spain, Italy, everywhere. It's not correct legally. And I'm sure many of us recall when Brexit happened, some of the big banks in the UK wrote to clients and literally gave them a sort of time limit of 2 to 3 months. You have to close your account. We cannot work with you anymore, which was sadly the right thing to do. And people said, hold on, I've had a relationship with you for 30 years. You can't do that to me. Well, of course they can, and they did. So that's the clear situation. You can retain investments in France all over the world. There are no restrictions. If you want to have investments in America, in Japan, keep the investments in the UK, not a problem. But it is very important to consider the currency of those investments. It is very important to consider your risk profile. Are they right for you these days? How old are you when you move to France? Are you considering retirement? Do you have a slightly volatile portfolio? The markets of late have been quite volatile. Is that appropriate for a person who's intending to retire to France? So no issue to keep the investments, but our advice would be get a review from a local advisor, someone who thinks internationally, someone who can look at both sides of the coin, the UK and France. And also bear in mind that if you retain non-qualifying investments in France, in other words, if you're in the UK, you have an ISA, it's a very tax efficient vehicle. Once you move to France, it's not tax efficient anymore. And the growth of that investment will be taxed in France. It's part social charges, 17.2%, and part tax, growth tax, that's 12.8%. So 30% will be taken off of your growth every year. Which of course is quite disappointing, because if you do a simple calculation, say you're getting 5% a year, if you lose a third of that, Eurozone inflation has dipped under 2.5% now, there's not a lot of growth left. So it would be advisable to seek advice from an internationally thinking advisor in France, someone who can help you with the tax issues on both sides of the coin and put you into the best place, so that you're getting maximum tax efficiency and performance in France, and also considering the currency.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, makes sense to plan ahead with these things. Don't just leave it all to the last minute. It sounds like it could cost you a lot of money, and no one wants that. Gareth, let's turn back to you. I mean, we touched on this gently, but I mean, what are some of the areas, firstly, that you cover, and are there any particularly more popular areas, or any sort of up-and-coming areas? We often get asked that because, of course, some people do invest in, you know, the Alps as an investment. Certainly be interested to hear any thoughts you've got there for prospective, you know, people buying as more of an investment. But yeah, what areas are you covering, and where are you seeing is sort of hot? We don't want it too hot. We don't want the snow to melt, but yeah, what's good?
The ski areas of the Haute Savoie are pretty well developed. So the places I've mentioned so far, I don't think any of them could be described as up and coming. They're established. We do have lots of less well-known areas where you'll be able to find properties that are less expensive. They're quieter. They're much more French, which can be a big appeal to some people. And I can name quite a few of them, but they probably won't mean anything to anybody. And some of them are really close to the big name resorts. Prades, for instance, is 15 minutes from Le Gay. It's a totally different resort, totally a different lift pass, and you go there and you're in another country compared to skiing in Le Gay. But I wouldn't call it up and coming. I would just say it's quieter, it's different. The best place to get a return on your investment, again, it's priced in to the value of the property that you're buying. So the longest rental periods you'll get will be in Chamonix, because of it's possible to rent all year round in Chamonix, but the prices are higher in Chamonix. So the return on your investment is priced in. So and if you buy in one of the lesser known resorts, it's cheaper. But you're trying to rent it will be harder. Not impossible by any means, but definitely harder. Whereas if you have a place in one of the big name resorts like Les Carreaux or Chamonix or Léger, renting really isn't a problem. There's plenty of demand, so you'll get a good return depending on how much you paid for it and how much you're renting it for.
Brilliant, thank you. And I mean, you mentioned obviously in France. I was actually in Chamonix earlier this year, and we took the Mont Blanc tunnel across to Italy to do a little bit of skiing. So it's great, isn't it? And now you've got the options to go. Well, you can get to Switzerland, of course, that's a bit further away, but it's all fantastic connections, and the transport links there. Okay, you're in the mountains, but it's so well thought out, isn't it? And it's all very, very accessible.
That tunnel is almost magic sometimes. You can go through that tunnel. It takes you 20 minutes and you're in a totally different weather system. It can be snowing where it can be drizzling in Chamonix. You go through and you've got cheap, nice coffee, pizzas. It's fantastic. The magic tunnel.
Absolutely. That's literally what happened to me. It was, I mean, it was raining at the sort of, the resort level in Chamonix. And perhaps it was snowing a little bit further up the mountain, but so I decided, oh, look, let's just go and try Italy. And it was, as they say, dumping it down on the Italian side. So that was great. And got a very nice lunch there as well. So nice to break it up. But having skied in that area, you've got so many different options, on the French side, and I don't want to embarrass myself getting the names wrong, but the different spots and the lifts you go to, and like you say, it's almost like totally different places, isn't it? You've got some in with the tree line, and you're sort of skiing nicely through, the forest, and then others are a lot higher, like say on a different side of the mountain and totally different weather pattern. There's just so many options.
Certainly. Yeah, the Mont Blanc Unlimited Pass, what is it? Les Houches, Chamonix, Flégère, Brévent, Grand Montet, La Tour, and I think also Saint-Gervais as well. And maybe even some resorts in America, I forget.
Amazing, brilliant. Well, let's get back on piste, as they say, although of course it's very relevant. It's no secret that the skiing in France, and of course snowboarding, any other alpine sport, is second to none. Natalie, let's come back to you. So obviously we're trying to get our mortgage dealt with. How do they actually calculate the affordability? And are there any differences to, say, getting that done in the UK and how that works?
Yes, very much so. So whilst in the UK, the majority of the lenders will generally take, multiply your income to calculate your affordability. In France, it's quite different. The way they work it out is that they basically reckon that your total outgoings, which is essentially your mortgage on your UK property, any other mortgages if you have investment properties in the UK, any personal loans, any car loans, any outgoings of that type, plus the future French mortgage monthly payment. These total outgoings should not exceed 35% of your total income. The vast majority of the banks will take the net income into account. Very few, take the gross income. So it's actually quite different. It's definitely a bit stricter than what we find in the UK. So this is why it's crucial to do this calculation as early as possible. And we're obviously able, that's the first thing that we would do with you, to look at those figures together, look at with your income, whether you're salaried or whether you're a company director. The banks will take slightly different figures as well. So we really need to look at all of that and calculate the ratio for you. That's one of the major criteria. After that, each bank, again, has got other criteria, and they all vary. And again, our job is to be aware, to know those criteria very well, so that we can direct you to the best lender and the most suitable lender for you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much, Natalie. Well, yes, worth the conversation with you to find out a little more there. Alan, let's come over to you. We've got a question that's been submitted really regarding inheritance tax. How can clients sort of plan for that? This was a submitted question live from Alan, sorry, from Darren, apologies, you're Alan. Darren had asked how to plan for future inheritance tax when passing on a ski apartment. How does that work?
That's where, as I mentioned earlier, it's important when you've been in these places a long time to have a good range of contacts, because with clients, you can be a financial advisor, financial planner. That doesn't mean you can do everything. You still have your limitations, and there are certain areas you have to make the client aware of that. So with regard to inheritance planning, I have a very good contact that I've been working with for years, a British guy. He's a lawyer based in Lyon. He's qualified in the UK. He's also qualified in France. And his specialism is inheritance, all things that go around it. And of course, it's important that he's qualified in the UK because he can also understand the link between France and the UK as inheritance does cover those sorts of issues. So at Spectrum, it's not something we like to get terribly involved in because it's not our specialism, but we do have very good contacts in the area that we can introduce people to. And updating wills, planning for the inheritance, all of this can be achieved with these sort of contacts. And we will immediately make a quick sort of introduction and make sure the client was looked after this way. And we find that that's the best way to do things. Bring in a professional for a very professional and specific need.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan. I'm going to take one here. I've got one of the more basic questions about the difference between a currency broker and the bank. So the sort of headline reason for dealing with Lumon, so we're an international payment specialist, is the exchange rate. We can demonstrate savings on the rates that we're offering when you need to make a payment versus the rates that the banks offer. We do a mystery shopper every so often, and we're demonstrating around 1 to 2 cents saving on those rates between us and the banks. So for every sort of £100,000 transferred, that could be 1 to 2,000 euros difference. So obviously that can make quite a difference in your budget when you're looking to actually purchase, and also any ongoing sort of living costs, any other expenditure that you will have. Obviously you want to be getting a good rate on that, so you're not paying too much money. So the actual rate you get when you trade, so we can demonstrate savings over the bank. But really with us, it's about the service in terms of the timing and the planning of the transaction. So we mentioned before, buying a property in France, you're looking at about 3 months from start to finish. Just this month in March, pound-euro levels have moved nearly 3 cents between the high and the low, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I don't know if anyone's been following the rates particularly closely. Don't worry if you're not, that's my job, I can keep you updated. But we dropped almost 2 cents within the first 2 weeks of March. I had some pretty fraught phone calls with some clients where, you know, the rate they were looking at one day suddenly changed, and all of a sudden their property is becoming more expensive. I mean, if you're talking about, say, 500,000 euros, the difference between the high and the low this year is about £11,000. So it does make quite a big difference to what you're actually going to be paying. So what we offer is some different options to be able to lock in an exchange rate early on in the process, or if at some point in that 3-month window the rate suddenly goes up, you can buy and lock in your rate with us. Now, if you're using the bank, typically you've got to wait until the payments are actually due before you can buy the currency, and that can cause these types of problems. So we've got a new man in the White House. I'm not sure he knows exactly what he's going to do next, and certainly the currency markets are struggling to guess, and that is causing market volatility. So you can lock in a rate using Lumon at some stage, whether it's a sort of defensive strategy. That's often quite popular to protect your rate early on. So, you know, right, my 500,000 euros, whatever the property is going to cost, I've locked that in. That won't change. I can get on with planning other bits and pieces for the property. I don't have to worry about the currency. Or you might say, well, look, over the next 3 months, I'd like to target this rate, and then if it gets there, we can purchase at that level. A slightly more risky approach, a speculative approach, but there's no right or wrong answer. I think we mentioned before, it's about a conversation with you. some clients would be on a very, very tight budget and they literally can't afford for the rate to drop. Of course, that would make sense then to be a bit more defensive. You don't want to have an embarrassing phone call to Gareth saying you can't afford the property. That would be a bad situation. If you've got a bit more money or you're not so concerned about the market movement for whatever reasons, then a more speculative approach may be sensible, so where you're targeting a higher level, but of course the risk that things may drop. So yeah, going back to the original question, how do we sort of differentiate ourselves from the banks? It's number one, the rate, but it's very much the service to talk you through the FX markets, talk you through some of the options that we have to lock in these rates, and just really make sure you're kept up to date throughout the whole process and you can make more of a really informed decision. So thank you for raising that question on currency. We've got a few more questions coming in here. Right, some questions here, Gareth. I'll turn to you first about hidden costs. When obviously buying a property, there's going to be more than just what you see as the list price. Perhaps you can talk us through some of the extra perhaps fees or charges with the sort of purchase, but also perhaps afterwards, anything that people should be budgeting for and be aware of, please.
Right, yes, okay. I'll start with buying. The main hidden cost is the notaires fees and the stamp duty. It's lumped together, and if you're buying an existing property, a second-hand property, you should budget about 8%. And if you're purchasing from outside of France, you'll have to find that as cash. If you're a French resident, then often you can include that on your mortgage. But from outside of France, you're going to have to find that as cash. So not only will you have in mind your deposit on a mortgage, but you'll also have to keep in mind the stamp duty and the notaires fees. So that's the main hidden cost. It's not that hidden, it is on the website, but you tend to focus on the price of the property and tend to forget it. So for buying, that's probably the main one. There might be hidden mortgage costs, which you need to talk to Natalie about, that you need to add on. But the hidden costs of owning a property can be quite long. So obviously there's the maintenance, snow clearing. That's a cost that you might not think about. Someone to look after the garden. The gardens grow at incredible speeds here in the summer. It's a very short but incredibly vigorous growing season, and if you haven't organized for someone to be cutting your grass and you come out, you'll spend the first 3 or 4 days maintaining your garden, which you see all around, which is quite funny. Obviously you've got your council taxes, so that's the taxe foncière and the taxe d'habitation. So second homes have got this taxe d'habitation, which in the UK it exists as well. And now it's like a second home tax. It's a bit less expensive here, but you have to take that into account. And also, if you've bought an older property and the energy, the insulation's not that good, you've got to remember you've got to heat these places in the Alps, and that can be more expensive. A more modern property with good insulation and maybe a heat pump installed, really it's not an issue. But yeah, living in a place where there's a long winter, you've got to keep that in mind. So there you go. How's that for a few hidden costs?
No, that's good. Yeah, good to get these things out there. I'm just going to stay with you, because we've had this question now asked a couple of times, just talking about rentals, perhaps where we talk about the investment side before. It's nudged a few. Suzanne Ellison, who's joining us live, has asked if we want to partially rent out a property, are there management businesses that we can recommend, and do you help with maintenance issues? Maybe Alan's got some good contacts there. And also this sort of tagging on to that, Gareth, I know something we've talked about previously, these French DPE rules. you want to just elaborate a little bit on that? I know I've asked you about 4 questions there, but yeah, just renting it out and some of these DPE rules. What does that all look like for people, please?
So renting it out, there's loads of options. They're different depending on which area you're buying. Your agent will be able to put you in touch with people, but there are agencies that will take your property on full time and get as much rental back for it as possible. There are agencies that can do an ad hoc management. So you could manage the bookings on Airbnb and arrange people to clean and sort the linen as required. That can save you some money. So yeah, there's loads of options available, but you have to talk to your agent about what's available locally. The DPE, the Diagnostic Performance Énergétique, is the energy performance certificate. I think
just to jump in there, sorry, so these are the ratings that you see on the property, because I know it's a legal requirement, isn't it, to display the energy ratings? Am I correct?
Exactly, and I think it exists in the UK as well. Your property will be rated A, which is very rare. There's the best down to F and G, which is unfortunately quite common for our properties. So yes, it's a legal requirement, and the French government is actively encouraging people to improve the energy rating of their home, be that adding insulation or changing an oil-fired boiler for a heat pump, for instance. So I know this is happening in the UK, but it's being done a bit more forcefully here. So there are, not so much in our areas, but in the big cities, there are regulations that say you can't rent a property unless it's got a DPE of E, for instance, so a better DPE. But it's an indication that this stuff is going to come and it's going to affect us. Some of the chalets that have got a poor rating, we're now seeing issues with getting mortgages. So the banks are saying, oh, that's got a poor rating. You need to show us that you're going to sort that out, because when you come to sell it, then it could be a problem for you. So
if I could jump in quickly, Gareth, on that one. You're absolutely right. The banks are a little bit more reluctant, but generally, even with G-rated properties, if the owner or the future owner is able to get the relevant quotations from the relevant entreprise, the relevant companies, to following an audit, following the energy performance audit, and is able to say, okay, I'm going to be fitting this, fitting that. These are the quotes. This is the cost that this is the cost of the quotes. Then the lender is likely to include this in the mortgage. So we are financing, we are sourcing finances for G-rated properties.
It's something to think about.
You just have to be aware that it's, you know, you're going to have to do that work at some point.
And I will just say, on second-hand apartments, it's harder if you're owning an apartment to improve the energy rating. So you rely on all the people in the apartment block to the copropriété to get together and pay to insulate the entire building, or to change the heating system for the entire building. And so it's going to happen. Everyone's got to have to think about it. But if you're buying a place and you're thinking, I want to rent this, and it's in an old apartment block, you need to be checking that the organizing committee have this on their agenda to make improvements. For a standalone property, a chalet, it's much easier to sort out. So it is complicated. It has become a lot more complicated recently, but the agents are talking about it all the time. So it's something you need to raise with the agent and discuss.
There you go, audience. Thank you for that. Really sounds like a topic best, discussed in detail. find out any more information about that. But sounds like it's easily overcome once you know what you're doing. As with many of these topics, speak to a specialist. It's generally the best way. Natalie, let's come back to you on mortgages. What sort of rates are we looking at in France? Because, well, I'm very familiar with interest rates with the currency world, and of course, interest rates in the Eurozone are lower. So better rates on offer than the UK?
Realized I was muted. Yes, so the rates in the Eurozone and in France at the moment are indeed lower than what we can find in the UK. So we are looking at, I mean, they have gone down over the last 12 months. At the moment, I must underline that with what's happening, as you said earlier in the White House, it's really difficult to know how the rates are going to move in a sort of short term. But currently, to give you the latest, so in terms of the higher the LTV, the higher the more you borrow, in terms of the lower your deposit, the higher your rate is going to be. So in France, you can borrow up to 85% of the purchase price, which is quite high. The vast majority of the banks will position themselves between 75–80%, but some banks can go to 85% of the purchase price, which is really quite good. When you're looking at LTV of 70%, you're probably at about 3.2% on 15 years. And when you look at 85%, you're probably just under 4%, so 3.9, 3.95 on 15 years. So you can fix in France, you can fix your rate for all that duration, which is something that we can't do in the UK. In the UK, you fix your rate for maybe 2, 3, sometimes 5 years, and then remortgage often. But in France, the good thing is you can really fix your rate for all that time, giving you the confidence that you will be paying the same amount of money every month for all, you know, for a substantial amount of time. So yeah, I mean, at the moment in the UK, you know, you're at about 4.2, 4.5% for 2, 3, 5 year fixed rate mortgages. Few banks are sometimes doing promotions and things like that, but what's really coming out at the end of the day is around that figure. So it's definitely better value currently in France.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much, Natalie. And obviously, clients can get in touch with you for the latest rates and you know, get some quotes together. Alan, let's come to you. Declarations on investments. How does that all sort of work in France? Should we be able to shed some light on that?
Yeah, surely. In France, we have a very straightforward tax year, 1st of January to 31st of December. If you arrive anytime during that year, then you better think about declaring investments, property, I mean, literally everything, bank accounts, do not miss anything out at all. We will be making declarations for 2024 in the next couple of months, in sort of April, May. Busy time in France, a lot of stress. You see people sometimes, if you go past the tax office in Chambéry, you see long queues of people wanting to get it right, basically, and then panicking. I must, you know, I had a problem before, I've got to do it right this time. So quite a stressful time in France for the accountants as well. But basically, if you arrive now, you have to start thinking about declaring, keeping a tidy note of everything, and declaring then next year, 2026, in the springtime, everything. Please do not miss anything. Do not think it's an old bank account. It's an old Barclays account I had as a student in the UK. There's really nothing in it, so I don't need to declare it. You could be fined 1,500 euros for non-declaration of an account like that, even if it's non-active. So years ago, my job was mostly about advice. Now it's certainly about advice, but also protection. And we say to clients immediately, make sure you did not forget anything. Just put it all on the tax form, start off clean, and everything will go smoothly from there on. So not a difficult system, but if you arrive this year, you will definitely be necessary. You'll be needed to declare everything early next year, and it's as simple as that.
Perfect. Okay, Alan, thank you very much. And again, worth getting in touch to understand how that all will work in practice. Make sure you're not going to be late with any of your returns. We definitely don't want that. Let's just come back to you, Gareth. And look, we're seeing these things in the press about you know, second homes and taxes. Anything more on that on the French side? I know some clients have been mentioning that to me as a potential concern. What's the latest?
So I mentioned the taxe foncière. It's the same if you are a French resident or resident in the UK and you have a second home here. And I was interested because I saw in the UK press there was a second home tax being introduced, and I saw that on average it was £2,200 per property on the second home tax. So I was interested to make a comparison, and here it's a little bit less on average. But I looked at if you were buying like a 2-bedroom property in Morzine, that would be about €800 a year tax. And if you bought the average size chalet, so like 150 square meters, like a 3 or 4 bedroom chalet, that would be €1,900 a year as your second home tax. So I was surprised because usually our taxes are higher than in the UK, but it seemed lower than in the UK. So there you go. The taxe foncière is our version of the second home tax.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you. Well, we're coming up to the last little period.
Sorry, I get it muddled. I get it muddled. Taxe habitation is our version of the second home tax.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Gav. So yes, we're just coming up to the last sort of final period. So I thought perhaps just for the audience, it'd be helpful for the panelists just to share a little bit about maybe just some of their sort of favourite things about France, but also as experts in this and having dealt with thousands of people perhaps over the years, what they see as some of the pitfalls for clients and just things to be aware of. Natalie, perhaps I can start with you, please.
Yes, so very much as I mentioned before, I mean, the important thing with the mortgage and with the financial side of things is to start early. If you start late, you basically at the risk of not getting your mortgage arranged within the relevant time frame, and you don't want that. So the earlier you talk to us, the better. It's not straightforward to get a mortgage in France, but there are numerous options. There are numerous lenders, and it's a matter of checking that you meet the criteria of those lenders, and a vast number of people do. And we help them every year achieve their dream. One of the advantages of the mortgage as well, falling back on which we didn't mention, but is the fact that if you want to do a bit of rental of your property during the winter or the summer, the interest of the mortgage in France are tax deductible, so you can deduct them off your rental income tax bill. So it's really quite advantageous to borrow in France, to borrow in euros. It will stretch your budget. If you have a nice budget in cash, you might want to see if you can extend that budget with a small mortgage on the side, maybe. So it's really what's important is to really talk to us, as I said, at an early stage. Personally, I know the team. We're a team of ladies, and the 7 of us love the Alps. We all love skiing there. We try to go there as often as we possibly can. I went skiing in Val d'Isère-Antigne, and I'm hoping to go to Chamonix soon. And I think just being in the region is absolutely fabulous. There are plenty of opportunities. There's plenty to do, and I think the resorts are also very much developing activities in between the seasons. So if you want to go down now in sort of in June, or you want to go down in October or November, a lot of the resorts will have developed some activities, and I think it's really exciting to go to the Alps also off season when it's a little bit quieter. I've had that experience numerous times, and I really enjoy just the beauty, the silence, and the nature, and the long walks. So yeah, we basically, our team is here to make this happen for you and help you, get your dream home in the Alps, really. So do talk to us when you want to.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm almost getting goosebumps from what you're saying there. I can feel your passion from it, and I can just almost picture it out there. Not that I need any real encouragement, but yeah, it's definitely a magical place. But yeah, thank you for joining us this evening and all your thoughts there. Brilliant. Alan, if I can turn to you, please.
Yes, I can echo what Natalie just said there, because sometimes I have got clients all over the French Alps, and sometimes I'm driving up to Chamonix, and of course you have the Mont Blanc, and it's silly because it's so hypnotic, and you're on the road, and you should concentrate on the road because it's a bit of a windy road, but you're looking at this amazing thing up there, and even in the middle of summer, it's covered in snow. And yeah, it's a hypnotic place, absolutely, for sure. Sometimes you're driving down from a meeting and you look across the valley and it's spectacular. And it's a place sometimes you have to go away for a week or two and then come back and realize what you're missing. And I often have conversations with people, with clients, and we say, tourists are coming soon, but yeah, we live here. We do this every day. We go to the lakes, we go to these things. It's quite beautiful. But on the other side, sorry, I'm a financial guy. I have to be a little bit boring now and then. I would definitely say to people considering a move to France, and this happens to all sorts of people, and we touched on this earlier, you have the relationship with your UK advisor, and it may be good, but it may not be the best thing for you. Seek out the international advisory firms, the people who can look at all sides of the coin, all the currencies, the international situations, people who've lived here, people who can tell you the pitfalls. I've had all sorts of meetings with people, American clients, who love their dollar, and they think it's best to stay in the dollar, but then the dollar is quite a rocky currency sometimes, as you well know, Jonathan, but they're paying their bills in euros. There are people who come in, they expect everyone to speak English here, so they go into the banks in Lyon, and Lyon is one of the biggest cities in France, and these American clients said, well, no one can speak English to me, what do we do? And they were amazed that I could speak fluent English. So these sorts of things, do a bit of research. One of the first things we do when we engage with a client is we send in something called our CRD, a client relationship document. It tells you everything about how we're regulated, the regulators in France, the right regulators. It tells you that we will be collecting your data and we will protect it. And it also tells you everything about our legal setup in France. So I would suggest to all clients moving to France, whether you're coming for retirement and you think it's the easy life, whether you're coming to set up a business, France is quite open to businesses these days. It's far better than it used to be when I arrived. Do your research, check these things out, make sure you're dealing with people who are giving you the best advice. We must. I say in the beginning of the conversation with the client, you will get the best advice, don't worry, because if we don't, you can go to the regulator and get compensation. So do your homework, do it properly, and you will have a very easy, comfortable life in France. You won't have any hiccups along the road. Don't try winging. It doesn't cost a lot. We're a very mature company. We are not someone who has a half-an-hour chat with someone and sends out a bill. Sometimes I speak to clients for 6 months on and off. Questions pop up before we engage and they move over and we start working together. No bills, no charging. We're very mature about that. We've got to make sure that we are offering you value for money and you are coming to France comfortably. So please, anyone listening, do your research, do your checking out. It's easy to do it on the internet. Do a Google search, regulation in France. What do I need to look at? It will come up, but make sure the people you're dealing with are the right people. Some older people tend to think they come from the UK, they've got a British passport. The FCA protects everyone with a British passport. So if I move to France or Spain, it's okay, I'm protected. Absolutely not. You need to be protected by the local people, the local regulatory organization. So please check those things out properly. You will have a great time in France. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, thanks for your helpful information and advice, and definitely worth speaking to Alan, get his help, not just on the financial matters, but also on car insurance, and I'm sure many others. You can't beat that local knowledge. Talking of local knowledge, last but no means least, Gareth, over to you, please.
I want to reminisce about the first time I saw Mont Blanc in 1989, but and also from what Natalie was saying about coming out of the ski season, the people the people that live here, generally, if you ask them if they had to keep a season, they keep the summer season. And the spring and autumn are just fabulous. So it's quite often the people who retire and spend more and more time in their second home here that learn that actually some of the best times to be out in the Alps are not in the middle of the winter. But you said to mention the pitfalls. Brexit hasn't really been mentioned, so I thought I'd just quickly mention that Brexit hasn't had a big difference for buying properties. It's affected how long you can spend in Europe. So if you want to retire here, you're going to have to apply for a visa. But buying a property hasn't made a lot of change. Selling a property, there has been some changes. So you'll need to speak to your agent about that, because there could be some hidden costs that you weren't expecting. Yeah, thank you very much. I can't believe an hour's gone past again, and I just got to say, if anyone has been watching, hasn't had their questions answered, reach out to me or any of us, because we're happy to talk, or email or phone, to discuss your issues and your questions.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Yeah, brilliant to get your input this evening, as always. And really, from myself, in terms of the pitfalls, I would say, again, this planning aspect, a lot of clients aren't aware that you can buy currency so easily and hold it in a wallet with Lumon, or fix exchange rates in the future. We can pay direct to the notaire. We just really can streamline that whole process of arranging the payments for the property transaction. So having that conversation quite early on, before even you're putting offers in, can be very beneficial to save you hassle really down the line. And I mean, I couldn't sell the Alps any better than I think my panelists with first-hand experience. But yeah, an absolutely beautiful place. So it's so unique, isn't it? The weather, you know, it's changing all the time, and I mean, you've got the sort of hustle and bustle, if you like, of somewhere like Chamonix, but then you've got the more remote sort of areas, you know, where you're really getting away from it. And yeah, it's one of my most favourite places in the world. And perhaps, audience, you don't need to be sold on the Alps, but yeah, I hope it's been helpful for us to talk through some of our personal experiences there. But thank you very much for joining us. There will be a copy of this recording that goes to everyone with all of the panelist details. We absolutely welcome further contact to discuss this in more detail whenever you might happen to be watching this back. But from me, it's a very big good night, and thank you for joining us, and from our expert panel as well, I'm sure. And we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.